Now, I would like to turn it over to our Government Affairs Director, Mr. Greg Astorian, who will give us new updates on extension of statewide eviction moratorium and what it means to our local landlords. Um, Greg, please take it away.
Uh, Thank you, Rick, and good morning to you all. If you remember when we met last, we talked about Assembly Bill 15, we talked about Senate Bill number 3, and these two bills, what they were intended to do is to extend the eviction moratorium. One, which is the Senate Bill 3, to March 31st, and AB or Assembly Bill 15 to the end of the year. In the midst of all of these, about 3 or 4 days ago, Governor Newsom, plus the two most powerful Democrats, Atkins and Randon, in California, got together and put up a proposal that needs to be voted on tomorrow to become effective. That proposal calls for extension of the eviction moratorium all the way to June 30th, 2021. So it's sort of a compromise amongst the assembly bills that were on the table, along with what has been suggested to be done. The good thing about this extension, there is a good thing about this one, is that the landlords will get paid 80% of what the tenant owes them from March 2020 all the way to March 2021, provided the landlord would forgive the rest of the 20%. So they're making the landlords 80% whole. Now, the preference would be landlords of smaller buildings and landlords that have housed tenants that are making about 50% of the average median income. That in Glendale today is about 60, I believe, $64,000. So if a landlord has a tenant that makes about 60,000, about maybe 50% of the 60,000, that landlord will get paid 80% of the arrears, the rent that is in arrears for that tenant. Having said that, it is important to also recognize that really all of these, the tenants that are in trouble in state of California, according to the latest statistics and information from Legislative Analyst's Office, is about 2% of the tenant population. And if you look in Glendale, at least the study that I've done in Glendale, it's approximately between 2 to 5% of tenants that are in trouble. And the amount of the arrears, depending who you're listening to, whether it's the LAO or the Philadelphia Reserve Board, it's anywhere between $4,500 to $7,000. So the good thing about this thing is that the landlords, at least to the extent of 80%, will be made whole. If a landlord decides not to take the deal offered by the state of California, then the state will pay him 25% of what is owed, which automatically may make them 50% whole. Why? Because all of these evictions require the tenant to pay 25% of the rent. If that is the case, then the landlord can go to the eviction courts and what have you. But word of caution for your clients and for yourselves, if you own properties or that are multifamily, that the judges could very well reduce the amount that is owed to you. So you need to juxtapose what is being offered versus the risk and or the opportunity that you may have to discuss this in front of a judge. Keep in mind, California, since March, at least in the first 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, our unemployment shot up to about 2.6 million. Today, we still have 1.4 million that are unemployed. From the start of the pandemic, California has spent $115 billion in unemployment insurance benefits to the folks that have been unemployed. This money that is going to be paid or make the landlords 80% whole is the direct result of the CARES Act. California's portion of that CARES Act is, which is the federal program, is about $2.6 billion. Out of that money, about 1.3 billion will be spent to make the landlords whole, or at least 80% whole. The rest would go to cities like Glendale that have populations of over 200,000, so they can use that money and use it in their programs to help stop evictions or extend their eviction benefits to their constituency. Mr. President, that concludes my brief, but I would like to also add, this is why we watch the city council meetings every Tuesday, and we take very, very diligent notes. Last night, there was a conversation about organic waste to be recycled. And initially that started with organic waste for businesses. In other words, restaurants and or businesses that have over 2 cubic yards of organic waste have to have a plan to recycle that in specially provided bins for organic material. In the midst of the conversation, an agenda item was introduced for discussion by one of the council people to make this also available to multi-family buildings, units over 5 units or what have you. So now we have a potential additional expense on the back of multi-family units, provided if this thing gets introduced, discussed, and approved. But we will be watching that and reporting back to you on it. Just thought I'll throw it in because we were talking about landlords and basically tenants. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Greg. I have some questions here. We will, I see you, Razmik. Thank you very much, Greg. As Greg said, we are attending all the meetings. There is also talk about, there's a search for a new city manager. We had a Zoom meeting with a company that is looking and searching and interviewing people for city manager. We had a Zoom meeting on Sunday with some people there, and we are at the table, and we are listening, and we are talking to them, and our input is important, and our input counts. And if you have any suggestions or whatever, please don't hesitate to contact me, Greg, or David. In the meantime, I have 3 questions. I have Carmen, Razmik, and then after that, I have Ira Bland. So Carmen, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and good morning. Happy New Year to everybody. Greg, I have 2 questions about what you just covered. Number 1, does the federal government then is the federal government going to give any allocations to landlords who will not be receiving their full rent because of this grant of 80%? And I don't know if I should ask my second one. It's really regarding the city of Glendale and this new suggestion of organic waste to be recycled by buildings of over 5 units. Is this something that's going to be put to vote in the city? Thank you.
Let me start with your second question first. The program that involves organic waste for businesses, restaurants, and businesses that produce more than 2 yards a week has been in existence since 2012. So this is nothing new, except now the discussion last night at the council meeting, all of a sudden, one councilman said, well, why aren't we doing this for the multifamily units, right? This was never the intention of that program, not now. So for that reason, another council member seconded that, and now that's going to become a discussion on the city council sometime in future. So nothing is set yet. No vote has been taken on it. No information has been provided on the multifamily aspect of this yet. But I thought I will let you know so you can have an intelligent conversation with your clients and or be aware of stuff like this that comes up. So it's in the back of your mind, you have some knowledge about all of these things. That's the intention that we have in GAOR, to give you as little information so it would not bore you, but to provide you and to give you information that you can use whenever you're asked a question. Now, back to question number one. The $2.6 billion that the state of California got from the federal government is part of the CARES Act. That money, half of it is going to be used to make the landlords whole by paying 80% of what the tenants owe them. And by some estimates, at least by legislative analyst office estimate, that is close to about $4,500 per tenant. And it's about 2% of the entire tenant population for the state of California. So that money, yes, it is federal money, and yes, it's at the disposal of state of California. Half of that is going to directly go to landlords, of course, if the landlords agree to forgive the rest, which is the 20%. The other half is going to go to cities that have populations of over 200,000 people. San Francisco, Oakland, Glendale, any city that has got, or LA County in that matter, any city that has got a population of over 200,000 will receive its share of the rest of the 1.2 billion. And they will use that, as City of Glendale has done. City of Glendale has had resources such as Measure S and has used some of that money in order, and plus some grants, in order to help tenants that have had issues paying their rent. Usually these are the tenants that make about 50% or less of the average median income. Average median income being 66,000. So tenants that are 30,000 or so, making 30,000 or so, which is our working class folks that live in the city of Glendale. I hope that answers your question. That money is there, has been funneled to California, and that money will be used. Tomorrow, a vote will be taken whether or not this thing, the eviction would continue on to June 30th. And I believe in that vote, you will get a lot of clarity on how this money will be dispersed. I hope it's not like the vaccines being dispersed.
We'll bring you more update as the vote is taken. All right, let's go to Rasmus, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My question is regarding this grant for Greg. Thank you for the information. How the landlord is going to apply, and where do they need to go? Is this the state money, city money, federal money? And the follow-up question is, you said something about their qualification. The landlord has to make not to make too much money, right? Is that what you said?
Not true. No, that's not what I said. But go ahead, finish up your question.
Okay. The question is, a landlord, how he can go and apply for this grant. That's the main question. Where to go, where to apply? Is there a paperwork? How can I help them? There are a few of them that are my clients are asking.
And so I don't have an answer for that. Nobody does. Okay. We will know after the vote is taken on Thursday. But what remains as part of this outreach or this program, this is federal money, Rosmi. This is $2.6 billion that has been funneled to California for that purpose, right? And half of it would go to the landlords directly, provided the landlord is willing to give up the 20% of what is owed, right? And provided that the landlord provides a notice to the tenant that there is a program like this available, and the tenant is making less than 80% of average median income. with emphasis on tenants that are making less than 50% of average median income. So that's in a nutshell what this program does. The rest of the $1.2 billion will go to the cities that have populations of over 200,000 people, so they can use that and augment, in addition to what this program does statewide, to do the same thing or repeat the same thing for their constituencies in every city. So it's not the landlords that are making less than 50%.
Okay.
The tenants that are making less than 80% of AMI, their landlords would be eligible to get this money.
How we can help them to get that? How do we help the landlords?
So we don't know that. I'm sure that there will be a mechanism, a regimen, but as I said, I hope that this regimen is not the same as how vaccines are being distributed.
Okay, let's go to Ira.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, my question was sort of related to Rasmus about how do the landlords get their money, but like so much of what happens in Sacramento, the legislation is poorly written and it gets voted on. So one question is, if this thing passes, is this emergency legislation that would be effective immediately? And the other part of it is, do we know if there's any kind of an audit capability, just like they have found out so much money was squandered on the unemployment? My concern is there's going to be an overabundance of people applying for funds and there's not going to be enough money and there's going to be fraud going on. Do we have any insight into how this might progress?
So thank you for the question. All of the points that you're making are apt. Here's the problem. This is 2 or 3 days old, by the way. This decision was made between Governor Newsom and the President of the Senate and the pro tem Assembly Speaker Atkins. It was made about 3 days ago. There were discussions, but that decision was made 3 days ago. Tomorrow, on Thursday, they have to take a vote on the eviction extension to June 30th. It's within that vote that I believe a lot of clarification will be made about the mechanisms or the regimens that the landlords can apply and get what is due to them, rightfully so.
Will the vote be both in the Assembly and the Senate then?
I believe tomorrow's vote has to be both houses. I am not so sure, but we'll find out. But tomorrow that vote has to be done. And there's no way that that vote can be, that vote will be postponed. Because January 31st, in a few days, the eviction moratorium expires. So they have to take that vote.
All right,
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Greg.